Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
They say wisdom comes from having lived. What can you learn from the 2,000-year-old man turning 97?
Not just any man. One of the funniest men who ever lived, Mel Brooks. You know, I am Judd Apatow is probably a mediocre to subpar stand-up comedian.
Oh, you obviously have an opinion about Judd. He speaks very highly of you.
No. But I think he's one of the greatest comedic movie writers who ever lived. So I have I just want to clarify the respect. I think his movies are genius, brilliant. And he has heroes, just like I have a hero, Groucho Marx. His hero is Mel Brooks, and he got a chance to sit down. So can I say this out loud? Here is the Mel Brooks of our day, Judd Apatow, sitting down with the Mel Brooks at 97. And I know in your favorite publication, The Atlantic, and it blew both of us away.
Yeah, we're getting stuck on The Atlantic again. But yeah, what an interview this was. Now, why would we bother? I mean, look, first off, let's talk about Mel Brooks movies.
Well, I'd be curious what your favorite is.
Might be High Anxiety.
Funny.
All right, funny. Not a lot of people know that one. Everybody knows Blazing Saddles, right?
But History of the World, Harvey Korman, of course, was hysterical in that.
The Producers?
The Producers, I think, is his most brilliant work. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the movie, which, by the way, I didn't know until this interview. Mel Brooks almost left, and we'll talk about why he chose movies later, but he almost left movies after a bad review for The Producers that he perceived bombed. Oh, by the way, while he's thinking about not doing movies anymore, he had won the Oscar for Best Writing for that movie. So The Producers, I think, is the most brilliant, but I don't know. There's just something about Young Frankenstein and History of the World.
Oh,
my
Young
favorite,
Frankenstein.
even over Blazing Saddles.
Okay, so let's go with Producers. Producers 1 or Producers 2?
I love the Broadway show the best, and I think that's how it played the best.
So, people don't realize Mel Brooks made the first Producers, the movie. Then he made the second movie at the end, or seeming at the end of his career. And the first one was amazing with Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder. Gene Wilder in the first Producers. It's
yeah. And then the second one was the Broadway cast in movie form,
right? But he spent so much money on the second one because he finally wanted to do everything he ever wanted to do in a movie, and he did it in the Producers in the second one, which is amazing. But the thing about Brooks that gets me is he brings up the reality of Jewish humor. Now, I mean, comedy is my thing. I can't wait to get to another comic movie. I love comedies.
And up until Mel Brooks, Groucho was a great ad-libber, but Jack Benny was more of a storyteller. But Mel Brooks was the first one to come along and not do like Henny Youngman. And by the way, I got to see as a child, I saw Henny Youngman in person. And it was the thrill of my life. Henny Youngman and Rodney Dangerfield would sit and do lines. They were lines.
Right.
And Mel Brooks didn't want to do that. He liked think. That's why he liked Lenny Bruce so much. Mm-hmm. But I think of, and not Judd Apatow, I think of Billy Crystal. But Mel Brooks had the ability to write music and lyrics. He had the ability to direct. He had the ability to write.
He performed.
He had the ability to act.
He could sing.
It's pretty hard to find anybody. Groucho maybe is close, but, I don't know. You could make a case that Mel Brooks was the most multifaceted comedic entertainer, period.
The thing that I love about it was he never apologized for being a Jewish comedian.
No,
he couldn't. It was just that's what he was, and his humor came from his Jewishness. A good part of it came from his view of the world, his view of history, his view of reality. That in and of itself is intriguing to me.
I love the stories when he talked, because Judd Apatow asked him, how did World War II and being in World War II and coming home shape you as a comedian? And of course, he'll tell you about the Jewish people of the Catskills, and how rough they were, more dangerous than the Nazis, because that's how tough Jewish humor was.
That's hilarious.
But I thought he was very honest when he talked about his childhood and how mean the Jewish kids were to others as well as others were to the Jewish kids, which is something you don't often hear, the back and forth. And then I sense from him his love for his heritage, just like you and I have a love for our Italian heritage. We wouldn't have wanted to have any other childhood, as dysfunctional as it was, than our Italian childhood. But he had it all in perspective. And World War II, he said, changed his perspective because kids can't understand totalitarianism. And when you know what Hitler is and what he's doing and the evil he's doing, and then you're there trying to disconnect bombs and mines, bombs and pickle jars.
Yeah.
The stories were just amazing. And that's all in there because you know as well as I do, you can't be that funny unless you think that deep and feel that deeply.
And he was a part of the generation where we put 12 million people in this country in uniform. Mel Brooks was more than willing to go, and everybody went. Every race, every socioeconomic class, everybody.
Joe DiMaggio.
Somebody from everybody went. You had Native American Indian tribes doing code debreaking. You had Japanese Americans fighting for their honor because they didn't agree with what their former country had done. You had Italians going because they were going to go fight because that idiot Mussolini screwed up everything, and that moron, they were going after him. Okay. I mean, you had everybody going to fight. You had a generation that was going to fight knowing, and I say this most humbly, knowing that they had to save the world or the world was, as we know, it was over.
You had the women in the factories producing the weapons. I mean, it was
everybody going, kids sacrificing. It was amazing what people were willing to do. And Mel Brooks was a part of that generation. Now, okay, so why didn't he just make all kinds of patriotic films? Why is it that he was always mocking everybody? What's with that? Was that a guy who hated people, you think?
No, he was just, I think, there's several kinds of Johnny Carson. Which, by the way, I love that he mentioned in this interview, Johnny Carson. And
I figured you'd catch that. Yeah.
Yeah, how selfless Johnny was. Of all the people, when you would go on the talk show circuit, Johnny wasn't looking for the limelight, looking for the laugh. He was very generous in giving the laughs. And I think you get a sense from Mel Brooks that Carl Reiner and Johnny Carson were two of the favorite people he liked to make laugh.
Speaking of Carl Reiner, how about, do you remember the episode with Seinfeld and comedians in cars drinking coffee?
Oh, it was amazing.
Where he got to go visit Mel Brooks and
brought
Carl
him soup
Reiner
and a sandwich
for dinner. They sent him out to the deli to go pick up their carryout. He brings the carryout to Reiner's house. And what are the two of them doing? They're sitting on a couch in their chairs with TV trays, eating their dinner, watching Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Two of the greatest comics in the history of the world.
I think, Carl, that friendship, and they eat dinner every night together.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. No matter what anybody's doing, no matter where anybody is, they would meet every night for dinner. But that friendship with Carl Reiner, being married to Anne Bancroft, I love that he paid tribute to her as the wisest person. When he was ready to leave movies, she was one that said, no, you're not leaving movies. Which I thought the whole movie thing was fascinating when it came out, in that the Sid Caesar comparison. I've told you the story. My dad had a night disc jockey in Flint, Michigan that worked for him and said, we got a band up in Lansing that I need you to come listen to. They're really, really good, and I'm in it. So my dad goes, and they were really, really good, and my dad signs them and starts the deal. Well, in the meantime, this guy gets a job offer to be a disc jockey in Detroit, takes the job as a disc jockey. They replace him in the band, and the band goes on to be Grand Funk Railroad. And that guy had to just kick himself the rest of his life. I love the story with Sid Caesar. So Sid Caesar, first of all, Mel Brooks has this epiphany. Movies last forever. Television shows don't. We knock ourselves out. We do a great show. Everybody laughs. The weekend comes, and then we're writing the next one, and everybody's forgotten, and they never see it again. We got to make movies. Movies are forever. And so Mel sets out to make movies. Well, NBC pulls in Sid Caesar and gives him, at the time, $25,000 an episode, which is about $1 million a year in the 50s. And Sid Caesar goes, I got to do it. I mean, that's a lot of money, but we can always do movies later. Mel Brooks goes on to be a household name. We're discussing Sid Caesar, who Mel Brooks thinks is one of the funniest people who ever lived. Forgotten, just as Mel indicated he would be, because movies are forever.
Let's see. Two Italian kids who love baseball and football and never jumped over 12 inches on the basketball court. Any guess which one got into most trouble with the nuns at school? Learn more at 1850mainstreet.com.
So I read that and I thought it's interesting that's a point of view, and I see where he's going. And it certainly looks like it, because we're talking about movies he made decades ago, and these things cross all generations. Now, I'm not endorsing everything that Brooks has put in his movies. I'm just saying. No. But one of the things that Brooks has done is he has made everyone a target. There's not a people group that Mel Brooks hasn't made light of. There's not a period of history he hasn't made light of. Is that because he's a totally disrespectful moron who simply just wants to offend everybody and he's just a shock comedian? Or is there something more to all that?
Well, he said creativity, that's why he never liked to type. He talked about that. He didn't like to type his material out because when you type it, it's finished. And he thought creativity was never, first of all, he didn't like, and nothing made any of his bits or shows or movies unless they first made him laugh out loud. So he was always about the laugh. And I was bringing up earlier, Johnny Carson did a dissertation on comedy. And there's really only a handful of ways you make people laugh. Repetition can be one effective one. Shock is ultimately, and then relating is another. I think he was driven by shock, not like shock jock. Like, I love my wife so much, I bought her something.
Stop, well, hang on, don't go any farther.
What'd you get her? A rocket launcher, or something. Because it's shocking to the mind and that triggers laughter. I think he was just trying to get laughs. And I think can you imagine ABC playing Blazing Saddles like they did when I was growing up?
I can't believe you can still view Blazing Saddles in this woke culture. I don't know how that can possibly be.
And it's true. It's true. You can't.
The thing about Brooks, though, that gets me when I think about it is he was perpetually saying we take ourselves too seriously. I don't care what people group, what political cause, what military history, what character from ancient times. He was making fun of everybody. Why? Because he hated everybody? Because he thought he was more important than everybody?
He believed in the court gesture, right? He said it.
Or was he basically saying that part of the problem in this world is that we all take ourselves too seriously?
Just way too seriously, yeah.
We take ourselves way too seriously. That what we think is so absolutely important maybe isn't actually as important as we think it is. Now, that's a profound thought that bears chewing on for a while. So I like the fact that, yes, I could take a million offenses at the stuff that Mel Brooks has done and has said. But you know what's funny? Nobody's trying to censor Mel Brooks. The Atlantic is actually putting him in one of their lead articles, bringing one of America's most noted humorists and producers, Judd Apatow, in for the interview and publishing it nobly and boldly in this edition.
And guess what comes out? The biggest public enemy number one today, Dave Chappelle. Because it comes out in the interview that Dave Chappelle just walked up on the set of Robin Hood in Tights and said, I want to play Malcolm X. By the way, this would even happen in Hollywood today. So Mel Brooks goes, yeah, what do you got in mind, kid? And this young Dave Chappelle starts going into this rat, and Mel Brooks is cracking up. And he goes, that's it, you're it. They put him in the movie, which, by the way, Dave Chappelle makes cameos in a lot of movies. He was in Star is Born, the most recent version, and he was brilliant in that. But yeah, that's their public enemy number one. And he talks very seriously about we are the old-fashioned court jesters, and presidents need to be challenged. Governments need to be challenged. We need to challenge each other. And I think he did it. Do you have a favorite moment? There's one that reoccurs for me. I can be driving the car thinking of nothing, and all of a sudden I see it, and I start laughing out loud.
All right, what is it? I got to know.
And this is what I think is his most brilliant humor. Now, I have several others that might fall under they shouldn't make the podcast. There's P-Boy with Harvey Korman in History of the World that is hysterical. There is the chess match with the real humans. It's hysterical. But my favorite comes from Young Frankenstein. And it's not, any of the Camille, you little zip-a-neck, or any of those other lines that you always hear people do. I love when they cut to the bedroom. And there's Frankenstein in his, Brady Bunch pajamas, sitting in bed. He's got an open Wall Street Journal with the half reading glasses, and he's just turning the pages going, To me, I thought, I could just see him in the writer's room getting that. What if we cut to the bedroom? He's reading the Wall Street Journal with half glasses.
Yeah, you can hear it.
And I've remembered it all my life. And so I would just say, to what he was feeling when he approached Sid Caesar. And I think maybe Jackie Gleason is the exception. And that's only because The Honeymooners, and people forget this, it wasn't a show. It was in a variety show. And then they later pulled them out and made them their own show that played in repeats and syndication for years. But he was right. He was right. Live television, as important as it was, it only lasts for a moment and then it's gone. But movies last forever.
Okay.
And in the case of Mel Brooks, Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety.
And I'm not going to argue that movies last forever. I'm not sold as much as Mel was, but I know one thing for sure. I got a whole bunch of books, and he read a whole bunch of books, and he mentions them. And some books seem to be lasting forever as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know a movie is a script, so a movie is a book that's put on screen. But I think what he's trying to get to is the power of ideas. And Michael, I got to tell you, I get worn out from people who can't laugh at themselves. I get worn out from the siloed news reality that we live in, where you've got to play a role and you have to be right and the other guys always have to be wrong, and nobody can laugh anymore. Because you know what? At some level, we're all ridiculous, right?
And I think if you're going to be funny, you don't pick a side. That's been the death of Saturday Night Live. It's not even funny anymore. Nobody's trying to make you laugh. They're constantly
Mel Brooks
picking
picked everybody. I mean, he picked on everybody.
I want to finish with one story that he tells that I thought was so touching. So he's there in World War II, and he's, dismantling bombs and booby traps. And in this neighborhood in France where he's stationed is a little boy on a tricycle that every day would run up to him. Private Mel, he called him. Private Mel, Private Mel. And he'd give him candy and gum. And he had a relationship. We always hear these stories with our troops and kids, and it's very touching. But not like these crazy odds. So now, flash forward 20 years after the war, they're filming, I think, The Elephant Man in London and Paris. And he takes a bunch of the cast members, because they had an off day for a rewrite. And he takes them, because you want to see where I served in the war? And he takes them to Normandy. And then he goes to this French farmhouse, which was by where he was stationed and where he spent many nights inside. Because that was his job, to go in, clear a place for the troops to sleep that wouldn't blow up. By the way, of all the things that he talked about, the pickle jar isn't even the weirdest. They used to put the booby trap bombs in the toilets because they knew that the troops would come in to use the bathroom, and then when they flushed, they'd blow up. I mean, Mel Brooks had to do all of that. Remember Hurt Locker, the movie? That was like this guy's gig. So he goes back 20 years later to the farmhouse and knocks on the door. I've done this in Arlington Heights, and I've knocked on the door of the people who live in my house when I was a child, and they let me in. He knocks on the door, and this big, gruff Frenchman, giant Frenchman with a beard, angry, basically tells him to take a flyer. And he takes another look at him and double takes, and he goes, Private Mel. What are the odds, David? The little kid on the tricycle grew up to be the owner of the home where he was to clear out for the troops to sleep, and they reunite. I mean, when you live 97 years, you make a great impact. You make some great memories.
Happy 97th birthday to Mel Brooks.
Our hero. A hero.
A hero.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.